Imagine you are a monarch trying to maintain power over a territory that has just been scorched by fire and sword. You possess an army, taxes, and sacred texts justifying your rule. Yet, artists continue to depict the truth in their works. Mutants, the consequences of genetic failures, and symbols of a destroyed empire that are understandable to every survivor. These images serve as a ticking time bomb, preserving the memory of who truly burned the cities and where your technologies originated. With one decisive stroke, you declare these sketches allegories of sin, transforming symbols of resistance into harmless decor, twisting their meaning to the opposite. What will you choose? To destroy all the paintings and confirm your fear of the past, or to rewrite their significance so that people see only harmless fantasies in them while you erase the real history? Now let's take a look at how this played out in real history. Open the Encyclopedia of Art History. Find the biography of Hieronymus Bosch, one of the greatest artists of the Renaissance. Read the date of death, 1516. The great master passed away in his hometown of Hertogenbosch and was solemnly buried in the St. John's Cathedral. His tomb was preserved for centuries. Descendants would come to pay their respects to the genius's remains. And then, in the 20th century, scholars decided to exhume the burial for research. The tomb turned out to be empty, completely empty. No bones, no ashes, no remnants of clothing. Nothing. As if no one had ever been buried there. Historians throw up their hands and mumble something about reburial, about lost documents, about medieval traditions. But there is no answer. The great Bosch has vanished. His body has gone for a stroll, and no one knows where. And now take a reproduction of any painting by Bosch with a signature. Zoom in on the fragment with the autograph. Examine the letters closely. What do you see? A proper noun is written in lowercase. Not I Hieronymus Bosch, but I Hieronymus Bosch, with a lowercase I. Open the third grade Russian language textbook. The first rule of orthography: proper names are written with an uppercase letter. Always, in all languages. This is not a whim of grammar. It is the foundation of writing that has existed for centuries. In an era when every letter in an official document or an artist's signature held legal significance, when notaries examined every flourish of the pen, it is unimaginable that a great master would sign his works with a gross error. This is not a mistake. This is a standard. In all paintings that are allegedly signed by Bosch, the name begins with a lowercase letter. The artist, who worked for the religious brotherhood of the Mother of God, creating altars for the cathedral, could not afford such freedom. The church scrutinized every detail, every symbol, every letter, yet the signature remains. And it does not look like the handwriting of a living person. It looks like a seal, like a stamp, like a logo. The most obvious explanation is that medieval spelling rules differed from modern ones. The writing style was more free. Perhaps it was a personal whim of the artist, his creative caprice. Okay, then explain this. Enlarge the fragments of inscriptions on different paintings by Bosch. The triptych, The Garden of Earthly Delights. The painting, The Seven Deadly Sins. Compare the handwriting. The ink color does not match. The style of letter formation differs. The pressure of the pen varies. The slant is not uniform. It is as if the inscriptions were made by different people at different times. When an artist signs a work, they use the same paint with which they painted the picture. This is the technique of the time. The paint was prepared in small batches, and its shade is unique to each mix. pigments were ground by hand, and the binder was added by eye. It is impossible to replicate the exact color a month or a year later. Different ink colors and signatures mean one thing: the inscriptions were made at different times, or by different people. If the signatures were made by different people, then who is Bosch? Look at the official family tree of the Van Eycken family. This is the real surname of the artist. Jan van Eycken, the grandfather, was born in 1380. He was a Dutch painter, restorer, and designer. He founded the family workshop in 's-Hertogenbosch. His son, Antonis van Eycken, was also an artist. Then another Antonis, the father of Hieronymus. Brother Huys, also a painter. Nephews, all artists. All family members were part of the same brotherhood of the Virgin Mary. They all worked in the same workshop, from generation to generation. For 150 years, one family produced paintings in a unified style under a single brand. This doesn't look like a dynasty of artists. It looks like a family corporation, like a manufacturing enterprise with a brand. The workshop was functional. Artists changed. Some died, others took their place, but the label remained unchanged. Hieronymus Bosch was on the paintings regardless of who actually created them. Like McDonald's or Apple today, you don't know who specifically assembled your iPhone, but it bears the company's logo. You're not buying the work of a specific engineer, you're buying the brand. Bosch also operated this way. It was a brand of family production. And if Bosch was a brand, then how many other great masters were actually corporations? In the sketch that is officially attributed to Hieronymus Bosch, the inscription Bruegel is clearly visible in the lower left corner. Bruegel, another well-known artist who supposedly lived after Bosch's death. But his signature is on Bosch's work. Experts are still debating who the drawing belongs to. Some say Bosch, others Bruegel. But what if both are right? What if this is one and the same conglomerate? Open the family tree of Peter Bruegel the Elder. Write down the names. Peter Bruegel the Elder, nickname the Peasant. Peter Bruegel the Younger, nickname the Hellish. Jan Bruegel the Elder, nickname the Heavenly. Jan Bruegel the Younger. 4 artists with similar names, identical technique, the same themes. Now compare their works. Take the catalog and place the reproductions side by side. Can you tell which painting belongs to whom? Experts constantly get confused. Paintings are reattributed year after year. What was considered a work of Peter the Elder yesterday is now attributed to Jan the Younger today, and vice versa. In an era when each painting took months to create, a family of 4 artists could not physically produce the number of canvases attributed to them. Do the math yourself. Peter Bruegel the Elder is credited with about 45 paintings over his 44 years of life. Does that sound realistic? One painting a year seems quite possible. But if you add engravings, drawings, sketches, and drafts, it totals several hundred works. One person cannot paint, mix colors, prepare canvases, apply primer, create a painting in multiple layers, each taking weeks to dry, make engravings, and at the same time manage to sell their works, communicate with clients, and travel around Europe. It is physically impossible to combine the creative process with commerce and material production. These are 3 different professions, each requiring full-time dedication. Historians usually say, artists had apprentices. The workshop functioned like a cooperative. Apprentices prepared the materials, sketched the composition, and applied the background. The master painted only the main details, the faces and the hands. The rest was completed by assistants. Wonderful. If this is such a standard and widely known practice, then at least name one person. Where are the names of all these numerous assistants and students? A grand project like this, spread over years, must have involved dozens of people working on it. Where are their biographies? Where are their own works? Dozens of famous artists emerged from Raphael's workshop. Giulio Romano, Giovanni da Udine, Perino del Vaga, each of whom left their mark on the history of art. Their names are well known. Their works are studied. From the workshops of Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Titian, students emerged who became masters. And from the workshops of Bosch and Bruegel? No one. Emptiness. It's as if faceless artisans worked there, deliberately erased from history. Or perhaps they never existed at all, as it was an industrial production under a single brand, where individual workers did not matter. Now let's take a look at another artist, Harry Met de Blesse. He is referred to as a follower of Bosch. Almost nothing is known about this man's life. Even his real name is unknown. Met de Blesse is a nickname given to him because of a white lock of hair. Literally, with the white lock. His real name has not survived. His paintings are indistinguishable from those of Bosch. The same technique, the same themes, the same fantastical monsters, the same ruins in the background. Experts constantly confuse their works. A painting was attributed to Bosch, then reassigned to Harry, and then it was returned to Bosch again. 3 artists: Bosch, Bruegel, Harry Met de Blesse. 3 brands, or one conglomerate producing products under different labels for different markets. Just like today, when one corporation owns a dozen car brands. Volkswagen produces Audi, Skoda, Seat, Porsche, each with its own identity, but all from the same assembly line. The same logic, the same scheme. Pay attention to the technique. Surreal plots, monsters, beings transforming into objects, objects turning into animals. Absurd, illogical connections. This requires not just skill. It demands a unified school, a set of templates developed over years of practice. It's impossible to convey this orally. You can't explain in words how to draw a hybrid of a fish and a building. It requires written instructions, sample albums, corporate standards, a kind of technical documentation for artists. The production of paintings in the Netherlands in the 16th century resembles not the studios of individual geniuses, but a network of branches of a single corporation. But who was behind this corporation? And the most terrifying question, what were they actually doing by creating these strange, nightmare-filled canvases? In the lower right corner of the document is the inscription Hieronymus Bosch, along with symbols that historians read as 1516, the year of Bosch's death, the year the painting was created, the official dating on which the entire chronology relies. But look closer. These are not numbers. They are letters and sticks. The Latin uppercase I, 2 vertical lines, the number 5, the number 6. A strange jumble of symbols. Take any document from the Renaissance era with a date. Examine how numbers were written. Roman numerals, 1, 5, 10, 50, 100, 500, 1000, or Arabic 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The system was uniform, either Roman or Arabic. They did not confuse them in a single entry. Now look at Bosch's dating. It's a hybrid. The letter I instead of the number 1. What is this? A mistake? The ignorance of the notary? Or something else? Nosovsky and Fomenko pointed out a peculiarity in their works. The letter I in medieval texts often denoted not the number 1, but the abbreviation from Jesus, INRI, and similar acronyms. This means that the notation I.516 can be read not as 1516, but rather as the 516th year from Jesus Christ. If one considers Christ's birth not in the first year of our era, which is itself a convention invented in the 16th century, but later, everything collapses. The official chronology relies on such datings. On inscriptions where letters are interpreted as numbers. On documents that have been copied over centuries, with changes made. If even part of these dates is misread, the entire history is artificially extended by hundreds of years. Historians insist on their stance. This is conspiracy theory. Academic science has verified all dating through numerous methods. Radiocarbon analysis of the canvas, dendrochronology of the wooden panels, chemical analysis of the paints. Everything supposedly supports the 16th century. Okay, then explain this. In Peter Bruegel's painting, The Triumph of Death, there is an inscription that can be read as the year 1012. If one takes the symbols for the year of creation literally, as historians do, the painting is over 1,000 years old. The absurdity is evident. This means that the method of dating based on inscriptions in paintings is flawed. And if he is incompetent, how do we know that Bosch lived in the 16th century? Where does this confidence come from? The painting techniques of that time required a multi-layer application of paints. First, a white primer, then an underpainting, followed by the main layers, then glazes, and finally a protective varnish. Each layer dries from a week to a month, depending on the thickness and formulation of the binder. Disrupting the sequence can lead to cracking and peeling of the paint. The paintings supposedly from the 15th to 16th centuries do not have such defects. The layers are laid perfectly, without signs of aging. This is only possible with modern, fast-drying compositions, or if the works are much younger. Look at Bruegel's painting from the Prado Museum. Date, supposedly 1562. That's almost 500 years ago. Yet the colors are vibrant, the outlines are clear, and the faces of the characters are detailed. Compare this to the Russian icons from the 17th and 18th centuries in our museums. They are only 300, 250 years old. They have darkened, cracked. The varnish has yellowed, and they require constant restoration. Although they are 150 years younger than Bruegel's paintings, the paintings of Bosch, Bruegel, and their circle were not created 500 years ago. They were made much later, possibly in the 18th or 19th centuries. But then, the entire history of the Renaissance becomes a forgery, an artificial insertion designed to create the illusion of a continuous evolution from the dark Middle Ages to the enlightened modern age. If Bosch and Bruegel didn't create their works in the 15th and 16th centuries, but rather in the 18th and 19th, then why was this forgery needed? Who benefited from prolonging history and creating false dynasties of artists? And the main question is, what were they actually depicting in their paintings, if not medieval fantasies? Leonardo da Vinci. Say this name. What comes to mind? Artist, sculptor, inventor, engineer, anatomist, botanist, architect, musician, writer? A universal man, a genius of the Renaissance. He slept for 15 minutes every 4 hours to get everything done. Polyphasic sleep, say the biographers. This is how he carved out extra hours for creativity. Do you believe in this? Open the list of inventions by Da Vinci. Helicopter, tank, parachute, scuba gear, spotlight, catapult, night robot, submarine, bicycle, machine gun, self-propelled cart, nail-less bridge. Each invention requires calculations, drawings, models, and tests. Even if one were to dedicate just 1 month of work to each project, which is unrealistically little for inventing from scratch, it would take decades to complete everything. Plus, there are the paintings. The Last Supper, Mona Lisa, dozens of portraits. Plus, anatomical studies. He allegedly dissected 30 corpses while studying the structure of the human body. And plus, there are diaries with 13,000 pages. There are 24 hours in a day. Even with polyphasic sleep, there are still 18 to 20 hours left. How could one person manage to accomplish all this in 70 years of life? Modern engineers cannot reproduce many of Da Vinci's inventions. The helicopter from his drawings will not fly. The proportions are incorrect, the rotor is too heavy, and human muscular strength will not generate the needed thrust. The tank will not move, as its mechanisms will jam against each other. The parachute, made of fabric from that time, will tear upon deployment under the weight of a person. These are either fantasies or distorted copies of real devices that operated on other principles unknown to us. One person cannot be an expert in 10 unrelated fields. Hydraulics requires knowledge of mathematics and fluid physics. Anatomy requires medical education and practice. Painting requires decades of honing technique. Engineering demands an understanding of materials and mechanics. Today, even with access to libraries, universities, and the internet, it is impossible to achieve the highest level in all these fields simultaneously. And in the 15th century, without scientific journals, without academies, without an education system? The official explanation goes like this: he was an exceptional genius. Such people are born once in a millennium. His brain operated differently. He saw connections that ordinary people could not perceive. All right, then show me his authentic portrait. There is no confirmed lifetime portrait of Leonardo da Vinci. Not a single one. That famous self-portrait of the old man with a long beard, which is printed in all the textbooks? Highly questionable. It may have been drawn later, or it may not be him at all. How is it that a man who worked for dukes and kings, leaving behind thousands of pages of records, drawings, and designs, did not leave a single reliable image of himself? An artist who painted everything around him never painted himself even once? Because he did not exist as a separate individual. Look at the style of the drawings in Da Vinci's notebooks. Some are done with thin, delicate lines, others with rough, energetic strokes. Some have letters slanting to the left, others to the right. The handwriting changes from page to page. The pressure of the pen varies. It's as if several different people were writing in the same notebook. Aristotle. Read the name carefully. The Aryans of 100 bodies. Literally, 100 people, 100 bodies of Aryans. A corporation of thinkers working under a single pseudonym. Nikola Tesla. Invented everything in all fields: electricity, radio, X-rays, radar, turbines. He reportedly did not provide exact data in his patents, claiming to keep everything in his mind. He slept only 2 hours a day. The same scheme. Historical genius universalists share one common trait. They are attributed with superhuman abilities. A volume of work impossible for a single person. A multitude of talents that cannot coexist in one mind. Leonardo da Vinci is a composite image, a brand under which dozens of researchers worked. Their task was not to invent, but to legitimize the technologies of the previous civilization. After the cataclysm, the new masters found blueprints, mechanisms, and books, remnants of a highly advanced culture that existed before them. Some technologies were destroyed, too dangerous, granting people too much freedom. Some were adapted and simplified to a primitive level. To bring this knowledge into circulation, it was necessary to explain its origin. One cannot simply say, "We found this in the basements of destroyed cities." A legend is needed. They created an image of solitary geniuses who supposedly came up with everything on their own. In reality, they just copied and simplified outdated developments. The operation scheme looked like this. First step: find the surviving knowledge. In the libraries of standing buildings, in the basements of drowned cities, with the surviving keepers. Second step: select what is safe. That which will not destroy the new power system, will not give people too much freedom. Third step: simplify to a primitive level. Eliminate ether, atmospheric electricity, free energy. Replace it with steam, gunpowder, mechanics. Fourth step: attribute it to a genius. Create a legend about an exceptional individual who single-handedly made the breakthrough. Fifth step: destroy the originals and witnesses. If Leonardo is a corporation for legalizing foreign technologies, then what technologies were those? Where did they come from? Who created them? That very civilization that was referred to as Great Tartaria on old maps. Harry Met de Blesse signed his paintings not with a name. He would place a symbol, a small figure of an owl. The owl was his monogram, his personal mark. An artist about whom nothing is known chose the nocturnal bird as his identifying symbol. Coincidence? Let's find out. Open the paintings and engravings of Bosch, Bruegel, and Harry. Find the owl. It hides in the details. Among the branches of trees, on the windowsills of ruined buildings, in the hands of strange characters, in the niches of walls. This symbol appears over and over again, in every third painting, sometimes clearly, sometimes barely noticeable. In Christian tradition, the owl has a dual meaning. On one hand, it is a symbol of wisdom, the bird of Athena. On the other, it represents the night, darkness, heresy, and devilish forces. So why do artists working for the church, creating altars for cathedrals, so persistently depict this ambiguous symbol? In an era of severe censorship, when every detail in the church altar was scrutinized by the priests, no one would openly paint heretical symbols. If the owl is present and no one objects, it means it had official approval. Or its true meaning was different from what we are told today. Bosch was a member of the religious brotherhood of the Virgin Mary. His paintings were purchased by kings and cardinals. Philip II of Spain, a fanatical Catholic, collected Bosch's works. The infernal themes in the canvases, monsters, explicit eroticism, naked bodies, absurd hybrids of creatures, all of this was bound to attract the attention of the Inquisition. But Bosch was untouchable. He had a free hand for any expression. He could paint anything without consequences. Why? Art historians explain it this way. Bosch depicted sins to warn against them. Didactic painting. By illustrating the horrors of hell and the temptations of the flesh, he taught righteousness. The Church approved of such works as moral lessons. Then why did his paintings appeal so much to secular rulers? Philip II, the persecutor of heretics who unleashed wars for faith, hung the triptych, "The Garden of Earthly Delights," in his private chambers. A painting filled with naked bodies, strange creatures, and indecent scenes. This is not a moral lesson. It is something else. A coded message for the initiated. The owl, in heraldry and secret symbolism, often represents the guardians of ancient knowledge. A nocturnal bird that sees in the dark when everyone else is asleep. A metaphor for those who remember the past hidden from others. Those who keep the secrets of a bygone world. In some traditions, the owl is a symbol of Tartary, an empire that was erased from maps in the 19th century. Look at the old coats of arms of cities in Siberia and the Urals, Tobolsk, Irkutsk, and other cities. Many of them depict an owl or a horned owl. It is commonly believed that this reflects the local fauna. They say that there are many owls in the taiga, so that's what they drew. But why then are bears and wolves, which are even more numerous in the taiga, almost absent from coats of arms, while the owl is present? Because it was a sign of belonging, a symbol of a certain system. The very Tartaria, which was later renamed, divided, and rewritten in textbooks. The brand artists of the Netherlands in the 16th century did not merely work on commissions for the church or nobility. They preserved memory. Their paintings are encrypted messages about the world that existed before the catastrophe. Monsters are not fantasies, but distorted memories. About genetic experiments or mutations after the flood. About beings that truly lived until they were destroyed. The architecture in the background of their paintings is not a figment of imagination, but real buildings. Those very majestic structures that were later demolished, burned, or paved over. The owl is a symbol of belonging to those who know the truth, to the guardians of memory, to those who depicted not from imagination, but from memories and documents. And not only in painting. Look at the architecture of old European cities. Owls are carved on the gables of town halls, on tower clocks, on church bells, on tombstones in graveyards. This was a global symbol, a sign of a system that existed throughout Eurasia before its collapse. After the cleansing of Tartaria, the new authorities reinterpreted the symbol. They gave it a different meaning: wisdom, night, mystery, sometimes evil. to conceal its true role as a sign of resistance and a memory of the lost world. If artist corporations encoded messages about the past, what exactly was the past they remembered? What did their monsters and ruins depict? And most importantly, who gave them permission to continue doing this under the new regime? Why were they not burned along with the books and blueprints? The real name of Bosch is Hieronymus Antoniusson van Aken, a complex Dutch name. It sounds foreign to the Russian ear. But let's break it down into parts, and you will see that it is not Dutch at all. Take the word Antonissen. Divide it. Antoni plus zon, or Antoni plus sun. Sun in Sanskrit means sun. Sanskrit is an ancient language, close to Russian, slightly altered through Indian tradition. Antonissen reads as the son of Antony, literally. This is not a surname, this is a patronymic. Ivan Antonovich, Yeremie Antonovich, just recorded in Latin letters. The Middle Ages was a time for the creation of the Latin language, from which European languages later evolved. Even Turkic languages contain Latinized roots. Therefore, in the names and titles of that period, we see distorted but recognizable Russian roots. Language families cannot arise in just a couple of centuries. Official linguistics claims that the Romance and Germanic languages developed separately for over 1,000 years. But historical documents show otherwise. The literary European languages only took shape by the 18th century. Before that, there was a dialectal chaos. People from neighboring villages did not understand each other. Many will think now, this is a stretch, coincidences. Linguistics operates under strict rules, and there is supposedly no connection between Antonissen and the Russian Antonovich. All right, then explain Van Aken. Van means one or first in many languages. The English one and the German ein all come from the same root. Aken is read as Akinov or Okinov. Van Aken translates literally to first of the Akinovs or main line of the Akinovs. This is not a linguistic stretch. It is a straightforward reading. A surname that actually means first name or first in the lineage. Not a personal name of an individual, but a designation of a corporate structure. Look at the name of Bosch's brother, Geuys Venusson van Aken. Let's break it down. Geuys Venus sounds like Goyus Venus. Literally, it means Geuys pig. Who are the Goys as written in the sacred texts of various traditions? They are those who do not belong to the chosen ones, and a pig is a direct insult. It turns out, Goy pig, son of Van Aken. It's a mockery, a taunt embedded right in the official name. Medieval corporate types loved to have a laugh. They would embed secret messages, jokes, and insults into family trees and names. Visible only to those who know the key. The others read, but do not understand. Let's take another name. Harry Met de Blesse. Met de in Romance languages means with or from. Blesse is close to the English bleach, white or shine. Met de Blesse reads as from the whites or with a white streak. Not a name, but a description of appearance. It's like if a 21st century artist were named Ivan the Redhead or Peter with a beard. Absurd. The real name is hidden, and Harry Met de Blesse is a pseudonym, a nickname, a brand for his work. The names of Renaissance artists are not just the names of individuals. They are brands, nicknames, corporate labels. They were artificially created, embedding codes, gests, and indications of belonging to specific groups. Bosch refers to the town of Hertogenbosch, where the main production office was located. Bruegel might be a distortion of some geographical name or craft. The same system worked throughout Europe. Leonardo da Vinci means Leonardo from the town of Vinci. Raphael Santi translates to Raphael the Saint. Michelangelo Buonarroti means Michelangelo the Good Rock. These are not random names. They are constructs, brand names for the legitimization of corporate projects. If names are constructs and people are brands, then who stood behind these corporations? Who hired artists, engineers, and scribes to create the fabricated history? And why did they need to extend the past by creating a fabricated Renaissance and an artificial Middle Ages? Look at the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. 1,100 square meters of frescoes, hundreds of figures in complex perspectives. Every muscle is defined. Every fold of clothing is detailed. The elegance of each detail is at the highest level. We're told this was done by one man, Michelangelo Buonarroti, in 4 years, lying on his back on wooden scaffolding, in the dim light by candlelight. Do you believe it? Take a calculator. 1,100 square meters. 4 years is approximately 1,460 days. Divide 1,100 by 1,460. It results in 0.75 square meters per day. Does it sound real? Try conducting an experiment. Draw something on your ceiling at home, at least a square 50 by 50 centimeters, with details, with elaboration. Lying on your back, arms extended upward. Time yourself. How long did it take? An hour? 2? 3? Now multiply this by 1,100 square meters. In the 16th century, there was no electric lighting. Work could only be done during the day, with natural light coming through the windows. In the chapel, the windows are small, placed high, and the light is weak. In winter, the daylight is short, lasting 5 to 6 hours at most. The paints of that time took weeks to dry. Each layer had to be applied separately, waiting for it to dry completely before applying the next. The scaffolding needed to be constantly rebuilt to access different sections of the vault. The cost of such a structure exceeded the annual budget of an average city. Wood, ropes, fastenings, constant maintenance. Who financed it? Pope Julius II allegedly paid from the treasury, but no documentary evidence of the expenses for the scaffolding has survived. Working at height in an awkward position causes pain. Lying on your back with arms stretched upward can last 15 to 20 minutes. After that, pain begins in the neck, back, and shoulders. Blood rushes to the head, and the arms go numb. Professional painters who work on ceilings know this. They take breaks every half hour. Michelangelo supposedly worked 10 to 12 hours a day in that position, for years. This would lead to chronic injuries, spinal deformities, loss of joint mobility, and constant pain. Yet there is no historical evidence of his ailments. On the contrary, he allegedly lived to 89 and continued to work on sculptures well into old age. At first glance, the logic is simple. He had assistants. They prepared the paints, outlined the shapes on the canvases, and applied the background areas. The master only finished the key details: the faces, hands, and drapery. Excellent. If this is such a standard and well-known practice, then at least name one person. Where are the names of all these numerous assistants and students? A grand project like this, stretched over years, must have had dozens of people working on it. Where are their biographies? Where is the evidence of their own creativity? History has preserved not a single name. All the glory went to Michelangelo. Why? Because he was a brand. The corporation of artists operated under one label, creating the illusion of a solitary genius for clients and future generations. Frescoes are painted on wet plaster. This technique is called buon fresco. The plaster is applied in sections, known as giornate, the daily quota. While the layer is still wet, the artist must manage to paint the fragment. Once it dries, it cannot be corrected. The entire section must be taken down and started over. This requires the most precise calculations. How much can you accomplish in a daylight hour? Which area should you mark? In what order should you work to avoid ruining what's already done? With an area of 1,100 square meters, the percentage of defects should be enormous. However, there are no signs of alterations, of areas being reworked or reapplied. The job has been done right the first time, without mistakes. This indicates a well-established technology of mass production rather than the effort of a solitary genius. The same goes for cathedrals. Notre Dame de Paris was supposedly constructed over 200 years, from 1163 to 1345. The Milan Cathedral took 600 years, from 1386 to 1965. The Cologne Cathedral was built over 632 years, from 1248 to 1880. Take a close look at the architecture of these cathedrals. The style is consistent from the foundation to the tip of the spire. Each buttress mirrors the proportions of its neighbor. Every gargoyle is carved in a unified style. The stonework is executed with the same technique throughout its height. Elements are repeated with mathematical precision. There are no visible breaks, no changes in fashion or technological approaches. Imagine the reality. 600 years of construction means 25 generations of craftsmen. The great-grandfather lays the foundation, while the great-grandson puts on the roof. During this time, everything changes. Tools improve. Stoneworking techniques evolve. Fashion in shapes and ornaments shifts every 50 years. New materials emerge. Old blueprints are lost and redrawn from memory with mistakes. It's as if everything was done according to a single project in a short time frame. Like a modern skyscraper, a year of design, 3 years of construction. The entire team works synchronously, based on the same blueprints. No generations, no evolutions of style. Moreover, the technical solutions in these cathedrals outpace the official chronology. Acoustic calculations of the vaults that amplify the priest's voice at any point in the hall. Ventilation shafts inside the walls, only discovered during the restorations of the 20th century. A system for draining rainwater through concealed channels. Mathematical proportions that create a psychological effect of elevation. All of this requires knowledge that supposedly did not exist in the Middle Ages. Engineering calculations, acoustics, hydraulics, psychology of spatial perception. Where did medieval masters acquire such knowledge, if science was only just beginning to emerge in the official timeline? The cult buildings of Europe are not the result of centuries of labor. They are the heritage of a previous civilization that was appropriated by new rulers. The decorations were created post facto to explain the origins of the structures. They legitimized foreign architecture through great masters. In reality, these were teams of restorers and decorators. They would rewrite, rework, and adapt what they found. They removed inconvenient details, added new meanings, and incorporated Christian themes over other images. The scheme for the legalization of someone else's heritage looked like this. The first step: find a surviving building, a cathedral, palace, or temple of unknown origin. The second step: carry out what is called restoration. Remove symbols and inscriptions that cannot be explained. Add frescoes with understandable Christian themes. The third step: come up with a legend. This emperor built it in such and such year. This master painted it. Create documents to support this legend. If the Sistine Chapel is the product of a corporation rather than a lone genius, what does that say about the entire Renaissance era? Could it be that this era never existed at all? Perhaps it was entirely fabricated to fill the gap between catastrophe and the New World. We are told that the paintings of Bosch and Bruegel have survived 500 years. They have withstood wars, fires, the dampness of cellars, and transport in carts over broken roads. And they look fantastic. The colors are vibrant, the details sharp. Now compare. An icon from the 18th century in your local museum. It's 250 years old. It has darkened to black. The linseed oil has yellowed, and the paint has cracked. It requires restoration every 20 years. Otherwise, it will turn to dust. The icon was indeed kept in the church in relatively stable conditions. It wasn't transported across Europe, resold dozens of times, or hidden in damp basements during wars. Take an old book printed 100 years ago. Open it. The paper has yellowed, become brittle, smells musty, and crumbles in your hands. Now recall the 15th century manuscripts in museum showcases. The parchment, supposedly 600 years old, appears clean. The letters are clear, the colors bright. The illumination has not faded. It is impossible. Organic materials deteriorate. Even with ideal museum conditions, a temperature of 18 degrees, humidity at 50%, minimal light, special display cases. Canvas, paper, wood. Everything is subject to decay, deformation, the effects of mold, and insects. The lifespan, even under museum conditions, is a maximum of 200 to 300 years. After that, a complete restoration is necessary. This includes duplicating the canvas, replacing the framework, and restoring the paint layer. Essentially, what is created is almost a new painting based on the remnants of the old one. The paintings, supposedly from the 15th to 16th centuries, have endured through eras without climate control. They hung in damp castles where water froze in pitchers during winter. They were transported in wagons over bumpy roads. They survived wars, looting, and fires. But they have been preserved better than works from the 18th and 19th centuries. The only explanation? They were written in the 18th and 19th centuries, and antiquity was attributed later on. If we are to believe experts, the techniques of past masters were more advanced. They knew secret recipes for paints and primers that have been lost. As a result, Their works are said to have endured better. Well then, why weren't these secret technologies used in the 18th century, when painting was flourishing? Art academies were opening all over Europe, and masters were trained by the thousands. Why did they suddenly forget the recipes of their ancestors, who supposedly knew them 200 years prior? And most importantly, if the technologies were so much better, why is there not a single detailed description of these processes? Alchemists of that time recorded every little detail in their treatises. Engineers created blueprints with millimeter precision. And the genius artists supposedly worked on intuition and left nothing for future generations? It's hard to believe. Conduct a chemical analysis of the paints used by old masters. Modern spectrometers allow for the determination of pigment composition with atomic precision. The results are shocking. Synthetic pigments that did not exist before the 19th century. Prussian blue, invented in 1704. Chrome yellow, synthesized in 1809. Cobalt blue from 1827. The binders contain traces of industrial chemicals. X-ray imaging reveals something even more intriguing. Beneath a layer of artificially aged soil, modern factory-made canvases are visible. With a uniform machine weave that cannot be achieved on handlooms from the 16th century. On handlooms, the threads always have an uneven thickness. In some places, the tension is stronger, in others, weaker. On factory-made canvases, there is perfect uniformity across the entire surface. Infrared photography reveals preparatory drawings made with graphite pencils. However, graphite pencils were not produced on a large scale until the late 18th century. Before that, silver point, charcoal, and lead rods were used. Graphite was a rarity. Experts are silent about this. Museum laboratories conduct analyses in secret. The results are classified and not published in open journals. Because the entire industry is collapsing. Museums own collections valued at trillions of dollars. Auction houses Christie's and Sotheby's sell paintings by old masters for tens of millions each. Art history textbooks are printed in millions of copies in every language around the world. To acknowledge that these are forgeries from the 18th to 19th century would mean to reset the entire system. The reputations of the largest museums, the fortunes of collectors, the salaries of thousands of art historians, entire university departments, all of this relies on the belief in the authenticity of the old masters. In the 2000s, a detailed analysis of the Mona Lisa was conducted using the latest spectral methods. It was discovered that the ground layer contains lead oxide in concentrations and with impurities characteristic of industrial production from the 18th century. The ratio of lead isotopes indicated European mines that were actively exploited during that time. Experts were quick to explain this as restoration. Museum reports stated that in the 19th century, the painting was supposedly refreshed, with a protective layer applied over the old one. However, upon deeper analysis, it turns out that the new layer is not a thin coating, but a full primer, several millimeters thick. If a painting has been completely rewritten several times over the centuries, with changes to the ground, duplication of the canvas, and restoration of the paint layer, what remains of the original? Nothing. This is the ship of Theseus, the ship in which all the boards have been replaced. Is it the same ship, or a different one now? The Mona Lisa that hangs in the Louvre is a reproduction from the 18th to 19th century, accompanied by a fabricated legend about Leonardo da Vinci. This legend is necessary to justify its astronomical value and the influx of tourists. The Middle Ages and the Renaissance are not real historical epics. They are constructs created in the 18th and 19th centuries to justify a new chronology. The true story is shorter. After the catastrophe, be it a flood, war, or pole shift, the survivors discovered the ruins of a highly advanced civilization. Buildings, machines, books, maps. To legitimize this heritage, they invented an ancient history. Allegedly, the Romans, Greeks, and medieval artisans gradually built culture over the course of thousands of years. In fact, everything has already happened. The new owners simply renamed, appropriated, and rewrote it to their advantage. And the work continues to this day. New manuscripts are regularly discovered in the storerooms of libraries. Forgotten archives are opened in the basements of monasteries. Old buildings are restored, appearing newer than new after the renovations. The production of false history does not cease for a single day. Each generation receives its share of ancient discoveries. To avoid asking awkward questions, to believe in the continuity of progress from ape to smartphone. If history is artificially extended, what was the true chronology? How many years has our civilization actually existed? 150? 200? And what happened to the civilization that existed before us? The paintings of Bosch and his circle are filled with nightmares. Monsters, hybrids of humans and animals, hellish torments, burning cities, crumbling buildings. We are told, these are allegories of sin, warnings about afterlife punishment, moral lessons in colors. But what if these are not fantasies? What if corporate artists painted what they saw or remembered? Open the triptych, The Garden of Earthly Delights. The left wing depicts paradise. Adam and Eve are in the garden, with animals surrounding them. The central panel features hybrid beings, strange creatures, and incomprehensible orgies. The right wing shows hell, torment, and destruction. The traditional interpretation, the journey from innocence through sin to punishment, a moral tale about the fall of man. But take a closer look at the details. The architecture in paradise consists of half-destroyed buildings, not heavenly palaces, but ruins. The beings in the Garden of Delights are not demons from religious texts. They are mutants, biologically plausible hybrids. The hell on the right is not an abstract space of suffering. It is a specific city in flames with recognizable towers and bridges. This is not an allegory. It is a chronicle of catastrophe, a documentary sketch of real events disguised as a religious narrative. In an era of strict church censorship, speaking the truth directly was deadly dangerous. The Inquisition burned for less. But if you encode a message under the guise of a moral lesson, you can preserve the memory for those who will understand. Corporate artists used Christian iconography as a disguise. Under the guise of biblical scenes, they documented real history. The human imagination does not create such details at random. Bosch's monsters are biologically conceived. The joints of their limbs are anatomically correct, the proportions of their bodies are adhered to, and the musculature is well defined. These are not fantasies, they are sketches from life, or based on detailed descriptions from witnesses. Genetic experiments, mutations after the catastrophe, attempts to cross species, all of this existed, and the artists remembered it. Skeptics will argue, this is a paranoid interpretation. Medieval artists simply had a rich imagination. They drew inspiration from biblical texts, folk tales, and alchemical treatises. then explains synchronicity. Around the world, in different cultures that supposedly did not contact each other, there are legends about times when humans mixed with animals, when monsters and freaks were born, when gods conducted experiments on living beings. Sumerian myths about the creation of slave humans, Indian Vedas with descriptions of Vimanas and genetic manipulations, Greek legends about the Minotaur, the Chimera, and centaurs. These are not fantasies of individual peoples. They are a collective memory of humanity about real events. Bosch simply documented this on canvas. He preserved visual evidence for future generations. The paintings of Hieronymus Bosch often depict destroyed cities in the background, fallen towers, collapsed bridges, leaning walls. Art historians assert that these are the ruins of antiquity. The artists were supposedly inspired by ancient Roman architecture. But why then are the people in the foreground dressed in the fashion of the 15th and 16th centuries? Why do they walk among the ruins as if they were just part of an ordinary landscape? Because the ruins were fresh. This is not a memory of a distant past. It is a current reality. The artists painted a world that had just experienced a catastrophe. Cities lay in ruins. The survivors wandered among the remnants of a great civilization. This is precisely what is depicted in the paintings. The corporations of artists worked on behalf of those who seized the world after the disaster. Their task was twofold. First, to preserve memory for the initiated through coded symbols. Second, to rewrite meanings for the uninitiated through Christian interpretation. The biblical project is a global operation aimed at reformatting the consciousness of the survivors. The old world needed to be replaced with a new one, a world where advanced technology, free energy, and possibly genetic experiments were swapped for a world of sin and salvation, a world of obedience and strict hierarchy. Artists created visual propaganda for a new world. What existed before was declared evil: monsters, sin, punishment, horror. What the new masters established was proclaimed as salvation, the church as the sole path, a strict hierarchy, unquestioning obedience. Bosch's triptychs function like comics, presenting a sequential narrative. On the left is a ruined old world, disguised as a paradise garden. In the center is the chaos of a transitional period, where people and beings are mixed together, and no one understands what is happening. On the right is the punishment for attempting to return to the old ways, a fire of purification. Look more closely at the right panel of the Garden of Earthly Delights. This is not an abstract hell from religious texts. This is a specific city that is burning. Towers, bridges, and buildings are visible. Recognizable architecture. The people are not just suffering. They are trying to escape a real fire, scrambling up walls, running from the flames. The Great Fires of the 19th Century. Chicago, 1871. Allegedly, Mrs. O'Leary's cow knocked over a kerosene lamp, and from that lamp, the entire city burned down. 10 square kilometers of buildings were reduced to ashes. The temperature was so high that stone melted, steel flowed in streams, and granite blocks turned into a glassy mass. From a knocked-over lamp? Seriously? Boston, 1872. 65 acres of buildings vanished in 12 hours. The official version is that a spark hit a fabric warehouse. Do stone houses melt from a spark? Seattle, 1889. The city was completely destroyed, including the underground levels. These are not fires. They are carpet bombings, or the use of directed energy weapons, a targeted cleansing of the architectural heritage of a previous civilization. The cities did not just burn. They were methodically cleared, block by block, so that primitive brick boxes could be built in their place, which we today consider historical buildings. Note the strangeness. After great fires, the layout of cities often changed drastically. The star-like structure of streets, characteristic of old cities, was destroyed. It was replaced by a simple grid that is easy to control. Straight avenues for the quick movement of troops. The absence of dead ends and alleyways where rebels could hide. Old cities were built on the principle of a labyrinth. Narrow, winding streets, sudden turns, dead ends, underground passages. This structure is impossible for a regular army to conquer. Every house is a fortress. Every block is a separate bastion. But after the fires, all of this disappeared. A geometrically perfect grid emerged, ideal for control. And one more sinister detail. After the fires, the population of cities often grew at an explosive rate. In Chicago, before the fire, there were 300,000 residents. A third perished in the flames. Yet within 10 years, the population reached 500,000. Where did the new people come from? Natural growth does not account for such numbers, even considering migration. It was as if people were delivered from somewhere. They were resettled anew, already without any memory of what had been before the fire. History is not the past. History is a product. It is produced by corporations. Back then, it was guilds of artists under the brands of Bosch, Da Vinci, Michelangelo. Now it's film studios, publishing houses, educational institutions. The mechanism is the same. Create a legend, repeat it 1,000 times through different channels, punish dissenters, reward supporters. The scheme of the biblical project looked like this. The first stage, a catastrophe destroys the previous civilization. The second stage, the survivors lose knowledge, technology, and coherent memory. The third stage, a new elite seizes power and appropriates the remnants of the legacy. The fourth stage, a new religion is created to maintain control through fear and promises of salvation. The fifth stage, history is completely rewritten. The old world is declared evil, while the new order is presented as the only salvation. Bosch, Bruegel, Da Vinci, they are not genius creators. They are employees of corporations that legalize stolen heritage. Their task was not to create something new, but to adapt the old, to take the technologies, buildings, and knowledge of a lost civilization, reinterpret all of this, and present it as their own achievements, to create an illusion of a continuous line of progress from an invented antiquity to the present. The system operated simply and effectively. They found a surviving building of unknown origins. They cleared it of strange symbols and inscriptions that cannot be explained in the new paradigm. They painted over the old images with frescoes depicting familiar Christian themes. They devised a legend. It was built by a certain emperor, painted by a certain master. They created documents to support the legend. They printed books where this legend was presented as an indisputable fact. They punished those who doubted. They rewarded those who supported the official version. 50 years later, the legend became an accepted truth. 100 years later, no one remembered what had actually happened. 200 years later, those who doubted were called crazy conspiracy theorists. And the most horrifying part, this process did not stop after the 19th century. It is ongoing right now, before your very eyes. Every year, new manuscripts are retrieved from library vaults, always just in time to support some historical theory. Forgotten archives are opened in the basements of ancient monasteries. They find precisely the documents needed for the official version. Architectural monuments are being restored beyond recognition. After restoration, the ancient building looks newer than contemporary structures. This is explained by the craftsmanship of ancient builders. However, it's clear that much of it has simply been rebuilt from scratch, leaving only a few stones in the foundation from the original for the sake of legend. The production of false history is an industry. With budgets in the billions of dollars, thousands of employees, a clear hierarchy, and well-established schemes. Archaeologists find what they are instructed to find. Art historians date paintings according to what the system requires. Museums buy forgeries for astronomical amounts, knowing they are forgeries, because admitting the truth means losing funding. Universities churn out specialists who memorize false dates in fabricated biographies. These specialists then teach in schools, write textbooks, and produce documentary films. The cycle continues. Each new generation receives a dose of deception packaged as scientific knowledge. Doubters are placed in the margins. They are not published in academic journals. They are not invited to conferences. Their research is not funded. They are labeled as amateurs, freaks, conspiracy theorists. Public opinion is shaped in such a way that anyone who questions the official narrative is automatically categorized as abnormal. But lies have an expiration date. Analytical technologies are evolving. Methods are emerging that cannot be deceived. Spectral analysis of paints reveals the true age of pigments. Isotope analysis determines the creation time of a material with an accuracy of up to a decade. Image processing software can detect forgeries that are indiscernible to the human eye. The system tries to control access to these technologies. Museum laboratories are classified. Analysis results are not published. Independent researchers are denied access to exhibits for verification. But leaks do happen. Honest scientists emerge who cannot stay silent. Data is published that undermines the official chronology. So far, there are few publications like this. They are silenced, ignored, dismissed as methodological errors. But quantity transitions into quality. When a critical mass of evidence accumulates, when too many people see the discrepancies, the system of lies will become impossible to maintain. The question is simply on whose side you will find yourself. Will you continue to blindly believe the textbooks that were written at the behest of the victors? Or will you start to see with your own eyes, ask uncomfortable questions, and demand real evidence instead of referring to authorities? Because the answers are truly right in front of us. In the signatures of artists, written in lowercase, that resemble corporate logos rather than the autograph of living individuals. In the empty graves of great masters whose bodies have vanished without a trace. In paintings supposedly dated 500 years ago, which have survived better than works from 2 centuries ago. In names that upon closer inspection turn out to be not personal names, but constructs, trademarks, corporate designations. Antonizon, son of Anton, a simple patronymic recorded in Latin letters. Van Aken, the first of the lineage, a designation of a corporate branch. Goius Venuson, Goy Pig, a mockery embedded in an official name. Harry Met de Bless, man with the white streak, a description of appearance instead of a name. In the dating of paintings, what initially appear to be dates turn out to be symbols, where letters are mixed with numbers. I.516 can be interpreted in a dozen different ways, depending on what one considers a letter and what counts as a number. The entire chronology rests on such shaky foundations. In the owls, secretly depicted in hundreds of paintings as a coded symbol, a sign of belonging to the keepers of the memory of Tartaria, of a civilization that was erased from maps, rewritten in textbooks, declared a fabrication. Yet the owls remain on the coats of arms of ancient cities, on the pediments of buildings, in the details of paintings as mute witnesses. In Bosch's monsters, which upon closer examination turn out not to be fantasies, but biologically well thought out beings. With correct anatomy, functional joints, and logical musculature, documented evidence of genetic experiments or mutations that actually took place. In the ruined cities in the background of the paintings, they were not painted as imaginary ruins of a distant antiquity, but as a real landscape outside the window, because the world had just experienced a catastrophe and ruins were everywhere. In technical impossibilities, when one person is assigned a workload that is physically unachievable even by a team, 1,100 square meters of painting over 4 years, lying on one's back by candlelight, 30 inventions in various fields of science, plus paintings, plus anatomy, plus diaries totaling 13,000 pages in one lifetime. In the chemical composition of paints that does not match the claimed era. Synthetic pigments of the 19th century found in paintings allegedly from the 16th. Factory-made canvases under the priming. Graphite preparatory drawings predating the invention of graphite pencils. All of this is not just a series of random discrepancies. It is a system. A global, well-designed system of falsification of the past that has been functioning for centuries. Its purpose is to conceal the truth about the lost civilization, about its technologies, which the new masters could not reproduce or chose not to share with the people, about its catastrophic end, which needed to be disguised as a gradual evolution. The biblical project, this is what one could call this operation, has reformed the consciousness of the survivors. Instead of memories of a highly developed world, people were given a religion of salvation. Instead of knowledge of free energy, they received coal and oil. Instead of the history of their ancestors, they were given a fabricated line from apes to humans through thousands of years of savagery. History has become a product, a commodity produced by corporations. In the 15th and 16th centuries, it was the guilds of artists under the brands of Bosch, Bruegel, Da Vinci, and Michelangelo. In the 19th century, textbook publishers, museums, and universities joined them. In the 20th century, it was film studios, documentary makers, and science popularizers. In the 21st century, social networks, educational platforms, and vloggers with millions of subscribers have taken their place. The mechanism is the same. Create a legend. repeat it 1,000 times through different channels so that it settles in the subconscious as truth. Punish dissenters through social condemnation, job loss, and the label of a conspiracy theorist. Reward supporters with grants, positions, and fame. But the truth breaks through the cracks in the official narrative, through the accumulating inconsistencies, through the advancing technologies of analysis that cannot be deceived. Sooner or later, the critical mass of evidence will reach a point of no return. When too many people see the lies, the system will crumble. And then we will have to answer real questions. Who are we really? Where did we come from? What happened to the previous civilization? What technologies are being hidden from us? Why has our history been rewritten and continues to be rewritten? Let's take specific examples that anyone can verify. Open the list of the largest museum collections in the world. The Louvre holds 38,000 exhibits. The British Museum has 8 million objects. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York has 2 million. The Hermitage has 3 million. The Vatican museums contain 70,000 works of art. Where does such a large number of artifacts of alleged ancient origin come from? Why are all the major finds concentrated in the museums of the victorious countries? Why do most discoveries occur specifically in the 19th century, when history was being actively rewritten? 19th century archaeologists discovered exactly what needed to be found. Excavations in Egypt uncovered the tombs of pharaohs at the very moment when Egyptology was becoming a fashionable science. Schliemann found Troy precisely where the official theory indicated. Winkelmann shaped collections of ancient art that perfectly validated his concept of the development of styles. Too convenient, too timely, too perfect for confirming the desired version of events. Check the dating of at least one exhibit independently. Try to gain access to the museum laboratories for independent analysis. Request the results of the radiocarbon tests with complete data, rather than general phrases like dated to such and such century. You will be denied, for various reasons. The exhibit is too valuable, we can't take the risk. The methodology is patented, and the data is confidential. A special permit is required, which is granted only to accredited scientists. And accreditation is only given to those who do not question the official version. The circle has closed. Only those who trust the system can check it. Those who do not trust will not gain access. Look at the restoration process of monuments. The Notre Dame Cathedral burned in 2019. They promised to restore it exactly as it was. Work began, and an interesting fact came to light. Most of the structures did not correspond to the technologies of the 19th century, not to mention the medieval period. Steel beams, concrete floors, modern fasteners. How did this end up in a cathedral supposedly from the 12th century? They explained it by the restorations of the 19th and 20th centuries. But if half of the building was reconstructed using modern materials, then what's left of the medieval era? A few stones in the foundation? Then it's not a historic monument, but a modern replica with a plaque claiming its antiquity. The same goes for other famous buildings. The Kremlin in Moscow was practically rebuilt from scratch during Stalin's time. The Peter and Paul Fortress in St. Petersburg was fortified with modern concrete. The walls of the Novgorod Kremlin were partially dismantled and rebuilt with new brick. What is left that is authentic? And who determined what the original actually looked like? If there are no documents, no drawings have been preserved, and it is being reconstructed based on the perceptions of 20th century restorers about how it should have looked in the 12th. It turns out we walk through a set, beautiful, convincing, yet still a set, depicting a past that may not have existed in the way we've been told. And as long as people don't start demanding real evidence, independent examinations, access to primary sources, the system will continue to churn out the version of history that suits it. It will create new great masters as needed. It will find the necessary artifacts at the right time. It will date objects in a way that is beneficial. Until then, the choice is yours. To continue living in an artificial reality where great masters were solitary geniuses, where history stretches for millennia, where progress unfolds linearly from simple to complex, or to begin to see what is hidden, brands instead of people, corporations instead of geniuses, stolen heritage instead of one's own achievements, lies stretched over the remnants of truth. Everything is visible. It's just that no one wanted to see. Because to see means to acknowledge life in a world of total deception, where even the past does not belong to us, where it is bought and sold, where it is written and rewritten at the behest of power. So far, every signature in lowercase is a trace of the corporate brand. Every empty grave of an artist is proof that the person never existed. Every painting that has survived too well for its 500-year age is evidence of forgery. Every name that reads like a mockery or a geographical reference indicates the artificiality of the construct. The system fears one thing, that people will start to question. Not to blindly believe textbooks and museum plaques, but to demand proof. Chemical analysis of pigments, isotope analysis of materials, access to primary sources, publication of all data, including those that do not confirm the official version. As long as citizens obediently visit museums, admire great masters, and buy reproductions for their homes, the system is safe. But when a critical mass of people starts to doubt, it all comes crashing down. Because lies, no matter how sophisticated they may be, cannot withstand verification by independent methods. History is a battleground. Those who control the past control the present. Those who control the present control the future. As long as you believe that Leonardo was a solitary genius, you won't ask where his drawings came from. As long as you believe that Bosch painted fantasies, you won't see documentary evidence of catastrophe. As long as you believe that Michelangelo painted the chapel alone, you won't notice the traces of corporate production. The choice has always been yours: to live in a beautiful lie where everything is explained and neatly laid out, or to search for the truth, even if it turns out to be more terrifying than any Bosch nightmare. Because the truth means that the world is nothing like how it has been depicted, that we have arrived at the ashes of greatness, that the technologies that could change every life have been stolen and hidden, that history has been rewritten by the victors so thoroughly that even the names of people have turned out to be forgeries. Subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you don't miss new investigations. There are many more mysteries and discoveries ahead. We will continue to search for evidence, ask uncomfortable questions, and explore what official science overlooks. Because the truth is always nearby. You just have to want to see it.